QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. It involves past life regression, but it also involves connecting with someone's subconscious or higher self. You know, when you connect with the subconscious and with the higher self, like you say, you are tapping into an all bigger knowing.
How would this help someone who's going through like real life challenges?
So being able to turn inwards and get the answer instead of having to rely on someone else for that information, regardless of your situation, how can it not benefit you? We do have access to this part of ourselves. It is already there because we all have the ability to heal ourselves, whether it be emotional, spiritual, physical.
Welcome back to another episode of the B.Human podcast. And today we have Nadia from QHHT Australia. And Nadia specialises in past life regression, hypnosis, and a few more things with quantum healing. So welcome, Nadia.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for having me. Love being here.
Our pleasure. Could you also elaborate a bit, because I think it's easier for you to explain what you do.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Because those words are probably not something a lot of people are aware of. And so if you could break that down.
Yeah, sure. So QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique.
Mm-hmm.
It's a technique that was developed by Dolores Cannon. So, sometimes people have heard of Dolores Cannon and not heard of QHHT or vice versa. And it started off decades ago with her, delving into past lives. And it progressed so much further than that. So, yes, it involves past life regression, but it also involves connecting with someone's subconscious or higher self. We tend to use those terms interchangeably. And it's at that point that, for me, that's the gold of the session, personally. I love the past life part, don't get me wrong, it's fun to explore, but for me, the past life part it's like clue gathering. You get all these little clues from a past life, but the higher self subconscious packages it all up at the end and everything makes sense. And, clients come to me with a list of questions and, we ask their subconscious or their higher self those questions as well and unpack those to get answers. So I suppose what is it? It's lots of things, but it's essentially past life regression, but with that extra connection with the subconscious higher self. And it's amazing, personally.
Awesome.
Might be a bit biased.
That's awesome. Now, how did you even get into doing this?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I've always been into things a little bit left of field, a little bit different. But quite a few years ago now, I came across actually a video of Dolores Cannon on YouTube randomly, and I watched it. I remember it was a video of her talking about, she was at some conference, and she was talking about her book, Between Death and Life.
Okay.
And this lecture that she gave, I don't know how to put it other than to say it just really touched my soul. I was watching this video, and some of the things she was saying, although to a lot of people would think was really out there, and some of it did sound a little bit out there, but listening to it, I felt in my soul that it was true. I can't explain what it was. Yeah. I just listened. I actually teared up. I was like, something has never resonated with me so much in my life. And so I started going down that rabbit hole, and I decided I want to have a session. And so I went for a session, and I thought it was great. I had a past life. It explained a lot of things for me and gave me some clarity. I didn't give it much thought from there. And then about 5 or 6 months later, still remember this to this day, driving down the freeway, down the Eastern. I love that freeway, by the way. It's usually really good. So I'm driving down, white line fever, half zoned out. Yeah. And all of a sudden it hit me like a hammer to the head. I thought, wow, I've actually come a long way in the last few months. Wonder what's happened. How did I do this? And then I realised, hang on, it was from that session. Because I actually took goosebumps. Yeah. I actually took the advice. Goosebumps now. That's it. I actually took the advice from my subconscious in a lot of places, applied them in my life, but also for me personally, it was understanding why certain situations had to happen to me in my life that allowed me to move forward without me actually realising it at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because,
Yes.
you don't realise sometimes that things hold you back so much until then, I call it the human brain. My human brain was able to understand why things had to happen to me, and from that point, it was like able to let them go. I wasn't thinking about them all the time. I wasn't hung up on these things anymore. And for me, it was able to give me confidence to do things in my life. So I'd come so far. And when I realised that, it hit me like another whack to the head straight away was, this is what I need to do. I need to do this, because my whole life I was looking for how can I help people, and nothing really stuck.
So what were you doing before this hammer to the head moment?
Yeah. I mean, I was doing admin work, I still actually do that work as well. Do a bit of everything, but and I still love it. But I was always looking for something to help people.
Yeah.
Nothing stuck my whole life until this. So I had my own session, and that was it for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to resonate to what you're saying now as well, because that resonates with me very quickly. A lot of people try to understand why certain things happen in their life, and it's most of the time we find that it's us in the way of things a lot of the time too. And once obviously that you did this session and you got into that subconscious part of yourself and understood why things were happening in a certain way, it then helps you progress forward.
Yeah.
And go for it.
No, I was going to say, and a lot of people are searching answers in an intellectual manner, so they're trying to make sense of it. But you can only use what you already know, right? When we're looking at it from that angle. When you do work like this, you're not accessing stuff that you've experienced in this lifetime and what you've been taught. It's literally, I remember I was telling you in the car today, I said there's a very distinct knowing between what is your thinking mind and what is intelligence. And I said you can feel it and experience it in a session. And when those drop in, you weren't thinking about it. Because not your brain or your own mind making those things up. It's like it is really an intelligence that you sort of tap into in those moments. And that's why they have a deeper impact, and that's inspiration, right? For me,
it's a knowledge.
That's when follow this. It's not the thinking mind telling me to do this. It's inspiration. It's coming from somewhere else. And I think when you do this work and you have tapped into that, that's the thing that sort of goes, hey, there's truth in this, because I did not think about this. I did not create this. I'm not manipulating this. I'm not making systems and steps to do this. Something else happened where there was recognition between truth and truth, right? Was that knowing? And it's like, dude, and your heart then is actually activated to follow that. And I think that's why it is so important for people to try, because it's nothing that you can actually mentally use concepts and thinking to understand. It has to be an experiential knowing.
Yeah, there's no logic, like in the typical sense that's applied, you're right. And, when you connect with the subconscious and with the high self, like you said, you are tapping into an all bigger knowing. You really are. You're tapping into this source of information and you feel it. Like I know I've had, myself, I've had a few sessions and even, when I talk to clients afterwards, a lot of them say that and I know personally this is how I feel it, when you connect with the subconscious, first, the lack of a better way, is like it's almost like a split of your consciousness. You feel it. Okay. The only way I can describe it is it's like you are aware of yourself saying and doing these things. It's like you're observing another thing. Yep. It's really hard to really put into words. Unless you've had it, it's hard. But you get this moment of this switch and you feel it, and you feel yourself and observe yourself answering questions. And although you know that, like, you're saying it, nothing's moving your mouth like a puppet, it's coming from you, but you're compelled to say these things. You're getting this information and you just spew it out. Sounds
very similar to when the reason why we do what we do now is very much the same as like when you were driving on that Eastern Freeway, right? It's a deeper knowing that comes out of you. When I did out my first ever journey, and Aisha was running that journey for me as well in a group setting, it's like what you said, like I had all of these subconscious memories come through, and I was able to have emotion, to cry and do what I needed to do to process things, but it wasn't feeling the sadness. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Like you weren't consciously sitting there going, freaking out, going, why am I crying and that? I was watching it from another party. You know, like I was kind of like watching myself and still understanding like, all right, that's me expressing, it's these memories are coming through, but you're watching it like an actual journey, like a ride. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think one of those profound experiences then does either land with you so deeply inside where you go, this is something that is just now no longer am I going to be the one thinking my way through all the time. I'm just going to be now, you know, giving up or surrendering in a way that life knows what to do for me. And then you just go on that journey with it. So this is very cool. I want to do this. I want to do this. Can you explain, if I was, say, a fresh client, I'm walking into my appointment with you, I said this to Aisha, I said, well, but what happens? She goes, because I know
there's no witchy poo stuff.
No, and this is why I loved it, because it wasn't that.
And she goes, literally, you're just talking.
We're talking and you don't realise maybe there's that, again, she's talking to my subconscious, so there's cues that she would know that I wouldn't pick up because I'm not focusing on it. So she's probably cueing me and I don't know in conversation, and then by the time I'm like ready to whatever, I'm already open enough for that to sort of drop in.
Well, we do. I mean, in a session, generally the way it looks is we spend probably, can vary, usually around 1.5 to 2 hours chatting.
Okay,
like
so it's
literally
long.
just
like
the whole session. We'll go
really?
for at
Wow.
least. I think the average is about 5 hours, start to finish. Come to
and you don't feel it.
No, it doesn't feel it, does it?
I'm going to say like you do not feel that.
No, because I think because it's sort of broken up. So you know, you spend the first couple hours chatting, and that's important because I need to know sort of all about the client, so their life from child to now. Because that will help me during the regression if something comes up, or you know, better than going in blind. So we chat, get to know all about them. We go over the list of questions they've come along with, and make sure I understand them correctly. Because when I ask the subconscious their questions, I don't sort of usually rapid fire them off. It's more conversational, you know, and so. One question can also turn into 5, you know, depending on what gets answered. I ask a question. So I like to know the intent behind each question. So we go through those. We then do the regression part, which, you know, goes for as long as it goes for, you know. That's where we go to a past life experience or really wherever the subconscious wants to take them.
Does everyone have a past life experience?
Can I just interrupt you? Sorry, Nadia. I remember when we were talking and she goes, because she has to also uncode. It's not as obvious sometimes where that past life is speaking from. And I remember she was like, it took me forever, but this one person was a rock. And I was like,
I've had that once.
I was like, you told me about it. You're like, and she goes, you know, she's trying
like, do you mean an actual rock?
Yeah.
So they weren't a human in any way?
No, I was going to say a past life. I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Like, you know, you go, what is a past life? Is it, you know, and if you know, think, well, like consciousness is eternal, it's existed before we were here and it'll exist after we've left this physical body. So in what form has it existed in and where has it been? I mean, there's been times where you haven't even had a physical body. So sometimes we go to sessions where people don't have a physical body, but they're in between lives, or they'll be, back at, I had actually...
I might be a grain of sand.
That would be that's going to be hard. Make it easy. But seriously, so like, you know, I don't know where people are going to go. And for me, that's part of the exciting part too, because I have to try and work it out. You know, sometimes it's easy. Like people will say, oh, you know, I'm here and I see this forest and I've got feet, and I'm like, all right, cool, you're a person. Wow. But someone who's a rock or a grain of sand, they'll be like, oh, I don't know, I don't have feet and I can't see. Or they might say, well, I might say, can you move over there? And like, no, I can't move. And I'm just thinking, what? You know, you can't really say, what are you? Because sometimes people, depending on how deep they go, could be that piece of sand, for example. Okay. So they're not going to know I am sand.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that consciousness has a limitation of how it can actually express
So
it.
you have to really ask a lot of questions first to work out what are you, where are you, what's going on.
Okay.
And then from there we guide it through the life, whether it's a human life, whether you're a leaf, a rock, an ET, something in another dimension, whether you're just consciousness, you know.
So how do you actually know that person is that thing? Could you have it wrong? Like if you say rock, could they really be, I don't know, like something next to the rock?
I don't know. Well, so that's the thing. I don't ask them what, I don't like tell them what they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about asking questions. I'm the question asker. They give me the answers.
Yes, that's what I noticed.
Yeah.
Like your question, it's almost like you turn it inside the other person. So the question, the way she asked the question, you literally are like doing the investigating.
Okay.
Yep.
It's the quality of the question actually gets me to go like, okay, go deeper and sort of like tap into it even further so that I can start to give like the answers myself. Yeah. She doesn't put that in. So it's not a thing that she makes you like you are actually doing all the discovery. She's just pointing. She's like, hey, look here.
And and in terms of, you know, having a session, I always say to people it's so much easier than it sounds. Like it really is. It really is, right?
I can vouch. Yeah. Honestly,
so easy.
It is.
All you got to do, like I say to people, the easiest thing is just relax, right? And I say you have to, because, you know, no one can make you relax, right? Like they have to allow themselves to. So I'm like, just allow yourself to relax and just talk and say the first thing that comes to mind with like zero filter, even if it makes no sense, because it does in the end,
and
right?
it'll just come out.
You just talk. You just say whatever comes up. It's so bizarre how it works,
really
right?
is.
And in the moment, you'll be like, none of this really makes sense. But if you trust it and go with it and just tell me all the clues along the way, it all gets packaged up at the end by the subconscious.
Do they have to fast this or nothing? No.
No, the only thing I recommend is no caffeine, sort of the morning of. Obvious reasons, easy to relax without, you know. Usually, you know, I say to people, no alcohol for 24 hours beforehand. Although, you know, I've had people say, can I just have wine with dinner the night before? I'm like, sure, like, whatever. But, you know, obviously don't come hungover. But,
so it's an
other
easy
than that,
thing to work up to. Like, it's not like,
No, good. It is so easy.
It really genuinely is. Like, I was actually shocked at how easily I was able to get into that state, and also not very conscious. It wasn't like, oh, I'm out of the state, now I'm in the state. It wasn't that. It's just a gradual, beautiful, natural evolution. You're just in, you know, and I felt very comfortable with you because you don't come across all weird and stuff, and I think it's important for me because it's like I still need to know that you live a real life, and I think that's why it really was good the way that I had that relationship with you beforehand. I was like, oh no, you're a normal person doing normal life, and this is a part of you as well.
That's very important.
It's very important because it also, like, it's good for my ego self, right? Because it's like, no, she's not crazy. Like, and why I also want people to understand, because a lot of people think, oh yeah, but that's a very separate thing to life and you know what people want to do, but it's not, because I feel like if we live in this world and we can get ourselves to a physical excellence, we can get ourselves to a mental excellence and emotional excellence even, but we really haven't sort of utilised the intelligence that's there, right? I feel like that is unbound. Okay, so we haven't touched, you know, instinct, intuition, higher self, and it's like, you know, people are all doing really well at catching each other here, but I said, if you really want to go to the next level, why wouldn't you tap into the other areas? Why are they, because now we say 5 senses, but there's so many senses, right? Animals can see different, you know, reptiles see different, birds see different, they have different way of like flight and everything. There are many types of intelligence, and I think by doing this sort of work, it has opened me up, and it's opened channels up within me, which, you know, it's strengthening, because doing this gets me to trust you know, like, so it's like a muscle, right? The more you do this and you open your perception paradigm, whatever you want to call it, what happens is that you do start to actually cultivate a strength in those areas as well, not just, so people don't think it's not going to help you in real life. It actually does.
It actually helps you very much in real life. I say to people, you know, the beauty for me, why I love doing this, is because it empowers people to go. And we always do have that connection, right? Like, I think we're all guilty of not trusting it, not listening to it, doubting it. And we've all had times in our life where we go, damn, if I only followed my instinct on this, it would have served me better.
Because we think we can manipulate everything and change the outcome or whatever we're doing. You know?
Yeah. And often we do get these nudges and these clues and these things and we just ignore it.
Yeah.
And so doing a session like this, I think it really empowers someone to realise, wow, I do have a connection. And not only that, I can recognise what it feels like, what it sounds like, and you can start to discern the difference between your ego, your human brain, your monkey brain, whatever you want to call it, that part of us that's like, in our ear the whole time, versus this much quieter voice. It's much quieter, but it's much wiser, you know, and when you can tell the difference between the two and you can live your life, I suppose you're listening to that more rather than listening to your monkey mind, you notice that things just, I don't know, life just works.
Life works.
You know, things just end up going much worse. I mean, I know in my life, even many years ago, I've made lots of decisions that on the surface did not seem logical. You know, why would you choose that over that? Makes no sense. Or whatever. I'm like, I don't know, I just feel it. I'm just going to go this way. And it's always worked out. It's always been the best option. You know, and so I just think learning to do that more, I mean, it empowers you in everyday life.
Yeah, and you know, the good thing about it too now is that science is catching up with like studying all this. And if you look at the left and the right side of the brain, you know that the right side is about that connection. You know, it's about the creative angle of it. It's about all the intuition and all the downloads. And, you know, we used to live from a harmony between left and right. Now we're just more dominated with the logical brain, right? So like do, force, because this seems more real than a feeling. You know, if you look at ancient cultures, if you ask them, hey, was that real? They'll say, what's the difference between his hand or in my mind? They're both real, right? Because both, they respect all realms and all space-time, you know, spaces. So for them, it's like that's just as real. So they give importance to that kind of, you know, intuition, download, a vision, a feeling, something that shows up in the body. And I think we're moving towards that. And if you look at even, what's his name, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, he also, you know, works with that, with the left and the right side. And they say animals live in that harmony between left and right, and that's why they're sort of in tune, right? So it's like, I love all that, because if you look at all the different modalities and the different experts in their field, they're all sort of converging into this thing of like, hey, there's a higher intelligence. We as a human being have the capacity to tap into that. We're an intelligent system. We can access that. You know, we don't have to stay in this, you know, animalistic state, which is just the physical body. We have other capacities. So it's like, it's really beautiful to actually know that, you know, we ourselves do have access to it. Everybody does. Like you said, you know, we're always connected to that. So knowing that, and that is sort of like where we're heading, how does this work and what you do play into our future, people with jobs, relationships? How would this help someone who's going through like real life challenges? How would you say this works for them?
Wow. Well, I suppose, really depending on the challenge or the situation, but I just feel that, you know, when you can, well, everyone can, but when you trust that information that's coming through for you in your day-to-day life, how can it not serve you? Like if you find yourself in a tough situation and you don't know what to do, being able to turn inwards and get the answer instead of having to rely on someone else for that information, regardless of your situation, how can it not benefit you?
Can you give us some examples? Can you not mention? Yeah, because it's good for them to know like what would that look like?
So say for example you are, I'm just trying to think of examples of people who've gone through so many things. Say for example you've got these really common one actually, repeating patterns in people's lives, right? Why do I always attract the same partner? Why does this always happen to me? And, you know, they're just a magnet for the same thing over and over, right? So if someone was able to connect inwards with themselves, and a lot of people do it through meditation, people can do it in different ways, meditation's common. You know, if they can get themselves into that nice, relaxed state and ask the question, put it out there, why is this happening to me? What is it trying to teach me? What's going on? And listen for the answer and get that answer, they'll get it. You know, they'll understand it. What they then do with that information, you know, I mean, that's the other part of it. You know, sometimes in some situations, just knowing the lesson or knowing the purpose or whatever is like a massive shove forward. With some, it's, okay, you know the lesson, you know the purpose, but you have to do X, Y, Z. So sometimes there's action they have to take. But being able to go inwards in those situations to figure out exactly what, why, how, when, get the answers, trust the answers, and act on them, then they can sort of, you know, move forward or make change or get out of those patterns. Or
it's removing a lot of doubt, isn't it? Because I find like for a lot of people, something I struggle with as well, right, is I'm always doubting myself, doubting my decision making, always going, oh, like, fuck, this is going to now end up the way this ended up. You know, back then it's the same pattern again, like what you said, pattern recognition, right? And it keeps happening. So I find that when you said before, like having the monkey brain, which is noisy, and I think a majority of society have that noisy brain, then finding that harmony, that quiet peacefulness, and knowing that that is where you want to be most of the time. And when people actually, you know, they've got to go through some sort of experience, I think, to understand that that exists. There's the monkey brain, the noisy brain, and there's also opportunity for you to, you know, like you said, there's some actions you got to take, put in some type of work or do something to live more in that quiet side of things, where life will unfold and you won't have to doubt yourself. Because I think a lot of us, anxieties, depression, all that stems from, and stresses, you know, stems from the fact that we can't even make decisions clearly anymore. And if we do make a decision, it's very quickly we start doubting the decision we've made. Why? Because what our eyes can see is making us constantly second guess what's going on, right? Yeah. We haven't given life itself or that higher power an opportunity to go, I trust you. And yes, you know, it might not happen overnight. There might be bumps and bruises along the way, but it's going to end up going where we see it to go. Yeah. Aisha and I did something the other day. What was that thing we did? And I read astrology. It out. This astrology thing, right? And we read it out. And that's given me it's removed a lot of doubt, right, from me. I don't think it'll work for everyone. Yeah. Not everything does, but for me it worked out. And I remember reading this thing. I was sitting in the car with my wife and she screenshotted me, she did it for me and sent it through. And I'm reading it and it's basically confirming a lot of things. Going, okay, I'm reading, I'm going, that's me, that's me. That is my natural state, right? When I'm not trying to be overly forceful, get in the way and control everything. I'm like, all right, this is me, cool. I read it all and I'm like, oh, everything is going to be what I see when I meditate. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, I think it's...
Well, what Nadia does is similar because you know how you said you can do it in a meditation? You can, but I think the surrender that you sort of provide me when I'm sort of like, I don't have to get both, like I don't have to ask the question and then I have to answer. So I've got to like ask with the thinking mind and then surrender the thinking mind and get it. So it's a little bit hard to go back and forward with that. But when I just was like, okay, I just trust, I surrender, and I'm just going to let her ask the questions. Honestly, I never felt, I told you in the car driving, I said, I did not think about my answers. It was like the answers were happening and I said, I don't know where they came from, but I remember crying in the session because I felt
So all that's even emotion.
I was going to say emotion can come out.
I know, I cried because I remember what my lesson was. I cried. I was a dad. I went through my wife's death. I went through me dying. I went through like so many different changes and as a kid and everything. And I went through all that and I just remember this thing that I had sort of committed to that I didn't need to, but it made me sad, you know, and it was like, I remember crying in it. It's like that I can't do that logically.
No, I was going to say some clients, I call they gaslight themselves sometimes afterwards. They'll say, oh, I think I made it all up. No. How could I? And and I just say to them, but you can't, especially when there's emotion, you can't make up emotion.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, you can, I mean, yes, if you're an actor, it can, but you're acting it. You're not actually feeling it. It's not coming up.
Yeah.
You know, you can't make that up.
I
It's
could
coming
not.
from somewhere.
And I had no reference.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was making something up with reference to what I had already sort of known. I was like, whatever was coming up was, I had no reference to that prior to, right? So I was like, where's that coming from? Because there was no story in my life that referenced that. So it was just that's why it's good. And look, if you're going to really do that, to sort of discover, because it's really interesting to see what are some of the patterns that you could carry on karmically, right?
Very
Because there are. You don't take anything else, but you do take on that energy form. You know, that energy form does contain patterns from your past, you know, which what we call past. It does. So those don't go anywhere. You've got those to work with through this. You've got DNA, you've got lineage,
Can we then
everything.
pass that on through our kids?
Yes.
Yeah,
we do.
So I think it's very important. Like, I've got 2 kids of my own, young kids, and only this morning I lost my shit. This morning, and then I was in the bathroom going, "Fuck, my son's almost 7. I've got to stop doing this." Like, we know that, you know, from the birth to 7,
like recording the whole
thing, and I'm like, I've got to stop doing it. But I'm then doubting myself as well, going, but I can justify why I'm doing it. So it's very hard. But then what happened was, I straight away had like memories of my father, same situation, and my father talking exactly the same way or doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, as much as you want it to, as hard as it is, I try to be conscious, but that pattern keeps winning, keeps coming out. I can't just be conscious of it, you know what I mean?
No, because it's programmed, it's running you. It's a program you learnt when you were young.
Yeah.
And it's what's running you behind the scene. It's, you know, it's just going to come out. And that's those moments where we go, oh, shit, I've turned into my mother.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, you know, I've turned into my father. You hear it coming out in yourself, you know, this recorded way of doing things.
Yeah.
So with clients and stuff, do you feel like when you get some feedback from them that they've had more clarity in life and like sort of if they've had a decision to make, they've sort of landed in that decision? And, or even if they've gone through things like separation and stuff, there's more like an understanding. Like what are some of those things that they've experienced through it?
Yeah. So, I mean, clarity is a big one. I think sometimes people will get clarity on things that just depends. Let's say if someone's really sort of tends to be really intuitive and in tune, they just don't trust, right? So like those kinds of people will get, their answers will be things like what I call confirmation answers, where they'll say, oh, you know, I think really deep down I knew that, but I didn't trust it, and it's come up, you know, and often when it comes up in that way or in a session, it comes up with a little bit more context around it too. Yeah. So it gives them a little bit more and they then learn to trust it. And sometimes absolutely new things will come up and they'll go, oh, I didn't even think of that. You know, and it's come up from, like you say, you know where it come from. It's just come through. But yeah, so clarity is a big one. You know, relationship breakups. I have a lot of people that come to me with work-related stuff as well, you know. It could be they run a business and they're not sure which way to go and they're really torn, or it could be, you know, that they are, you know, stuck in a job and I don't know what it is I want to do with my life and they just feel stuck. A lot of that type of stuff as well. Again, you know, and then often because, you know, I tell people to come in with all their questions, there'll be things on there, like lots of different things, you know, there'll be family stuff, relationship stuff, work stuff, like all over life stuff, and physical. I was going to say, what about physical stuff? What about like illness and like say someone just keeps having a injured shoulder or something? Yeah. So we can dig into those. So there is. I mean, I have seen some really good. When I say really good, like just. It still astounds me to this day, actually. I still feel a bit loopy saying it, to be honest, because I'm still like, how is this a thing? How? But I've seen it, so I can't deny it. But I've seen people, like, walk out pain-free from things. I don't know how like, I don't do it. It's their subconscious that does it. But I've seen a lady, quite funny actually, she had really bad, I can never pronounce this properly, I'm probably going to butcher it, fibromyalgia. Yep, you did. I've had to say that slow.
I don't know what that was.
Fibromyalgia.
It's like a pain, it's like one of those, It's a real thing, but it's one of those things that they diagnose, but they don't really know what causes it or what, it's like, you've just got pain all over, just deal with it, take some painkillers is what doctors will tell you, I think. But she had it really bad, but it was causing a lot of fluid build up in her legs and stuff like that. Yep. And I remember this one, I think she was burnt at the start, or something happened in her past life, but it caused the inflammation and things and all over her body. And when we tapped into her subconscious and I was asking about her fibromyalgia, I can say that, and I have to think about it, it said, it was because of that. And I was like, okay, well, is there a reason for her to have it now? Yeah. Because sometimes things come forward, but there's a reason, right? Yeah. So there could be some reason as to why they still need to experience something. But in her case, I said, no, she doesn't need it. It's just basically carried energy unnecessarily. So I was like, well, can you remove it then? They're like, yep. And I let them go in and do that, however it is they do that. I always find that interesting too. I usually ask the subconscious, can you tell me how you're doing that? Because I just find it interesting. It's,
does it respond to you?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you could ask.
It does. Yeah, it'll say to me, "I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm sending light, or I'm doing this," and I've said, well, "What does the client
she's literally
feel?"
Talking to the subconscious.
Oh, like I'm not doing it. I'm asking, like, "What are you doing? What does it look like?" Like, I'm just this curious thing that's asking.
Now,
and
wow.
But it was funny. She sat up, and I just said, "Oh, how you feeling?" She goes, "Good." And I remember she sat up. She was squeezing her legs because her legs were really bad. She was like, she's like, "They feel really good." She goes, "I actually feel good." And she got up. She was like, moving. She goes, "I feel really good." I went, okay. So look, just drink plenty of water and just keep going. And I never heard from her since, but it was quite funny because a few months later, I think it was her sister, cousin or sister, came to see me, and as usual, just a small talk. I'm like, "Oh, where'd you hear about me?" And she said, "Oh, my sister came to see you," and I knew straight away who she was talking about. Her sister had a distinctive name. And she said, "Oh, fibromyalgia." She goes, "Oh my God, she's lost almost 10 kilos since the session." But it was the swelling in her body.
Yes.
And she's like, she hasn't had pain since. And she's like, it's just gone. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. But I just love that because, I don't follow up with a lot of clients. They go on, they do their own thing. But it's nice to get that feedback and go, wow, like it's confirmation for my human brain, to go, wow, that worked. I had another client, so it's like physical stuff. I had another client who had really bad depression. Came to me. She actually drove from New South Wales. Wow. And I was like, you realised you passed like probably 20 other practitioners on the way to see me? And she was like, no, I just resonated with you. Yeah. I was like, okay, that's fine. Like if you resonate with someone, I get that,
Of course.
And she said, her big thing was her depression. She was like, I didn't actually ask her what exactly, but she said, I've got everything to basically end my life. I'm ready to do it. She's like, you're my last chance. And I was like, shit, pressure. But you know what? In that moment, I was like, I'm just going to treat it. It's just like anybody else, because it's not me doing the work, like the actual work on them. It's their own subconscious. And she had what I would call a pretty I'd say like a really non-eventful type life, like nothing really outstanding, nothing that you would write a book on type of thing. But she still got, obviously the experience she needed. She got all the answers she wanted, etc. And she actually reached out to me a little while later, a few weeks later, I think it was a month or so later, about some program I was running. And I asked her, I said, how you been? She laughed. She was like, I'm spending all this money and it's your fault. She was laughing. She said, because she goes, I haven't had a bad thought since. She's like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but some of the scenes and some of the things her subconscious brought up for her were quite confronting. Okay. But she was like, I needed that. She goes, I needed that smack in the face from my subconscious. And she was like spending money on like new furniture, clothes for herself, because she was always living off hand-me-downs, and not that she couldn't afford it, she didn't feel worthy. She would spend money on her adult kids who didn't appreciate her and treated her like crap, and not spend it on herself.
Oh, so she was older.
She was probably in her I want to say maybe 50s. Yeah. And she was laughing. She was like, I'm spending all this money now, but she was in a really good place. And amazing. I was like, I can't answer. I don't know how. I don't think I need to know how. I just make the space. I ask the questions, because we all have the ability to heal ourselves. whether it be emotional, spiritual, physical, but it's being able to be guided.
I think so.
I think is the key.
Hey, what if like someone kept feeling like a calling to a certain place or something in their life? Is that most of the time them? Could it be the subconscious or their past life showing them signs consciously?
Yeah. It could, yeah, definitely.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes people are like, I don't know why I feel this pull to the UK or this pull to Egypt, or and it's not like just a curiosity, it's this real, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever gone somewhere and it feels like home.
It almost feels like impulsive, like you need to go, like you need to just do it.
It's not just an interest, it's like this real energetic pull, and that could be a tie with the past life.
I definitely can vouch for that, because I remember I'm obsessed with Egypt.
Yeah.
And my past life came up in Egypt, and it was so interesting, and I always wanted to learn and dig deep, and I loved everything about it and stuff. And so when but the good thing is I also wasn't attached to that being that thing, so that's why I don't want people to think that to have that attachment, because I was very like whatever shows up.
That's right, you got to allow what's going to come through.
And I do believe that each time will be different. And I think your intelligence knows what is required for the questions and stuff too. So it doesn't always have to come the way you think it will come. And I think, because I was just so surrendered to that, and I felt great by being guided by you. I think it was such an amazing process. But yeah, when I did Egypt, and I'm so obsessed with Egypt, it made sense. Obviously it made sense. But
did you have emotion to Egypt? Like,
yes.
But what if you just thought, what if you think of something all the time, and it sparks emotion in you all the time?
But you got to think about it, of course.
Yeah,
so that's the connection, right? Because I always am very curious about it. I want to learn about it. I have emotion to it. I could feel the sand under my feet. I could see the sandals I was wearing. I knew I was a man. There was no doubt. Like I knew that was who I am. I love this. I was playing this, that, the other. I could feel everything, right? But again, the other thing was, I then remember I was in a space where I've never seen that in Egypt, right? So this is when this is not your mind, because I was going in and out of spaces where it didn't logically make sense that was in Egypt. And I, like you say, just go with whatever comes up, like allow it to come up, and I did, and I had you don't feel stupid in it, and that's the other thing, because if you're going to say this out loud in a space where you're very conscious, everyone's conscious, you do doubt it because it could sound stupid. Yeah. But when you're in that space and you're sort of providing that, just holding space, and you're like, okay, you're allowed to just speak whatever comes up. The fear of not being looked at stupid allows that intelligence to drop in further, because there's no resistance to it, because it's like people might not understand what you're saying, but I think that's a safe space to have, because people might have these, but they're like, it doesn't make sense though, because I've never seen this. So it's important to have those things too. So, and I feel like wherever you're at and whatever you're sort of working with, it will always sort of be guided to work with that. So for me, it was that lifetime with that understanding, and you might have a connection to something, and that's why it's activating now.
I think I think it is, because I was talking to Aisha, I'm born here, but I've got Syrian bloodline, right? And I've always been pulled to war, to standing up and fighting for against the oppressors or whatever it is. Yeah. So war really sparks me. I can't watch anything or hear anything about war because I get really emotional about it. So war was a big thing. I had Jesus Christ. I had very intense dreams as a young boy of Jesus Christ, where I felt it was real. I felt like I was walking through Damascus in Syria with him, and it felt real, to the point I'd wake up and run to my parents and go, this is what's happened, and everyone looks at you like you're crazy. Yeah. But it never leaves, that memory never leaves. And I've always got a very emotional thing to Jesus. So that, and just the land of Syria and that area of the world, I'm very much drawn. And it's funny because I live here, but my heart feels there. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I get exactly what you mean. And what's interesting is, say, for example, if you were to have a session, even though you do have this pull to there, you may not be shown a past life from there in that session. It's not to say you didn't have that past life, but when we do this, it's important, I always say, for the subconscious to take you to the most appropriate time and place, right, for the information you need now. And so whatever information that is that you need in your life now, if there's no reference to that, if it's not connected at all to, say, a past life in Syria or a past life with Jesus, it's not going to bring it forward because it's not relevant.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, sometimes people, they may have known they've had a past life in a certain area or really feel a pull, but that may not be what comes through on the day if it's not the most relevant. Because otherwise then I suppose really, if you tried to, and you could ask the subconscious to go take us to this life or whatever, but then you're doing it purely for entertainment value.
That's right.
You'll get some information from there, but will it help you progress at this point in your life? Probably not, because there's nothing of relevance.
Actually, that's like going and fishing properly for it.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So, it's really interesting how that works.
Yeah.
And always bring through what's most relevant. And for some people, it's a life. Some people have, some people have like what I call symbolic sessions. Yeah. I've had sessions like that too, where, I've had sessions where I feel like I'm in a past life, like watching a movie, and then I've had sessions where they weren't really scenes or moving pictures. I was getting pictures of like a symbol, or here's some pebbles, and here's this and here's that, and just random things popping in as well. And then the practitioner asks myself, what did this mean? What did that mean? What did that? And it's still all relevant. It's information I need, but it's how it's going to present it.
100%.
So you never know what's going to happen.
I'd love to. Have you ever recorded someone and like put it out there?
No, I've never.
Would you ever do that?
If they gave you permission.
Oh, if they gave me permission,
I'll give you permission.
Yeah. I've never asked, and I have thought about it, but I thought, what, if I've asked, I would probably ask after the session, if that makes sense, because I think, I don't know, maybe it's just me, this is my human brain kicking in, right? My little monkey brain's going, but if you ask them before, then they might hold back on what they say, because...
I think some people could.
Some people could, you know what I mean? But if people wouldn't, but I've thought about it. I've thought, maybe afterwards I'll ask.
I
it could always be edited anyway. But
I really reckon, because I think it's a good way of actually showing all aspects that we're talking about. We might have an intention, but your intelligence knows, hey, with reference to what you're asking, I've got to take you here.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, right? That's where you have to just let go and go, well, I would like to be here, but these are the questions, so it's going to take me there. And I think that would be a great way to sort of like
100%.
have a part 2 of this, which is like, I would want ordinary people that live ordinary lives to understand this was at one stage ordinary, and we have access to this intelligence.
Well, this is ancient,
it's ancient.
And we can guide each other, hold space for each other to actually help each other go to these spaces. Get questions, trust ourselves a little bit
like
more.
All ancient mythology and stuff, like there weren't real people like standing here.
Well, think about it.
But like there's ancient Assyrian, ancient Greek, and everything, mythology, and they're talking about, and they lived and they had memories and stories and things.
But how did they get that?
It
was an experience first.
Yeah, 100%.
So we are so focused on now looking at what someone's written, whether if it's a holy book or not. But understand, someone first experienced it, and we are denying the experience. We're going into like intellect and just going, okay, this is real because someone wrote it, but someone had to experience it before writing it.
That's right.
So I said, we're taking you back to saying, hey, listen, you don't have to read about it, which is, read and be curious, but read and don't trust. Read, be curious, then try. And then through your own trying and through your own experience, you start getting access. So it's like, when I say to my kids, it's no more giving answers. It's like, hey, what's your experience? Let's see if you can experience this thing that you want to learn, right? So even with this, I feel like a big part of like what you're here to do is to, what a beautiful thing that it's like you're giving people access to their own subconscious and getting them to experience for themselves, answering for themselves. You're not taking away anyone's power. You're not taking away anyone's experience. You're actually putting them in a space where they start to tap into themselves, and they start trusting in themselves, understanding themselves more, not judging, like, again, going back and looking at, this is why I have these patterns, having grace for themselves. And I think it's such a beautiful thing because you've got grace and you've got empowerment. You've got both now because No more shame, guilt and blame. You know, plus, I have access to this. I'm not a victim here. I can actually tap into this. And I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that you're doing. And, you know, for a person like me who I'm very, very curious in these spaces, however, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to just go everything that's out there and I'm going to do this healing. I'm not that person. Yeah. So I love the fact that you're very approachable. You live a normal life. And you have never made me feel like, oh, I need you to do this. It was very much like, hey, man, this is you. This is your subconscious. Lie down and explore. Yeah. And I love that, right? Because it never took away anything from me. And it was my experience. Like, nothing of you was actually ever, like, you did not interfere. And that's why I loved it, because it was, like, completely mine. And that's why I think it's good for people to just, even to break a little bit of your belief and go, shit, this shit's real.
Well, you should be curious. Like, people should be curious, because, you know, I can only talk from experience, but I'm sure everyone's felt the same way one stage of their life to the person next to them. You know what I mean? Like, on the surface level, everyone looks great, and some people look like they're just flying through, but bullshit. There's times where
we need that little bit of extra,
you've been curious about what, you know, why do these things come up? Why do I think like this? Why do I act like this? And you want to know the answers. So, on that note, if we want to book in with you, what happens? Where do they find you, and how do they do it?
Through my website, which is QHHTaustralia.com.au. There's plenty of links on there to my booking calendar, or there's a link on my Instagram as well, which is QHHT.Australia.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll put all that in the bottom of the episode as well. Yeah. And make sure people can find you.
And we'll definitely get Joey to do a session 100%. With you, and we'll record it, because that would be amazing.
Yeah, we just won't release it if it incriminates me.
we'll just edit it out.
We'll edit that. No, that's why I'm like, Jesus, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
Jesus, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that would be...
No.
That would be interesting.
Could you imagine?
I'd have some interesting questions.
Sew my lips together. Kissing no one. Awesome. It was a great experience to talk with you today.
Yeah, thank you.
And is there anything that you would like to say on an ending note?
Oh, look, I think I've said it all, to be honest. You know, I think, you know, I just want to let people know that, you know, we do have access to this part of ourselves. It is already there. You don't need this to access it, but it can help. Yep. You know, it helps, like you were saying, you know, it helps because you don't have to kick in that conscious part of your brain to ask the question to then, you know, but, you know, and so having someone guide you is really good. It helps you to, really recognise when it is your higher self, when it is your subconscious talking to you.
Yeah. And trust that.
And to trust it and to put it into every other. And life just flows much easier when you follow that as opposed to logic. And sometimes logic can be skewed by society expectations and things like that.
Well, look, logic hasn't got us to a very great place all the time if you look at the world right now.
It hasn't.
Let's lean into the other side.
Exactly. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nadia.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We hope that you enjoyed it.
Don't forget, guys, to please subscribe. Check out our website to stay up to date with events, merch, and just to get in touch with us.
Also, follow us on Instagram. We post a lot of good shit and funny shit.
You'll find that at the B.Human movement. Until next time, guys, please remember to be human.